I was born in 1970. Um, my earliest memories of growing up was, has always had my grandparents front and center in everything that, that I can remember from my earliest years. Um, Actually, both my grandfathers have been huge influence on when I was growing, on just my own childhood, and how I think about life and how I look at life. My mother was working. Both my parents were bankers, so my mother was always working, and you know working and looking after a large joint family. So she never really had too much time to spend with us, with my brother and me, as we were growing up. And I think she felt horribly guilty about it, but that was the case. So which meant that either grandfather would always stay with us. Initially, we were in a large joint family in Chennai. My earliest growing up years were in Kadalur and Coimbatore. um, I think, at least from whatever I can remember, academics was a huge piece of how I grew up. So this whole thing of being excellent in academics was never a choice, right? It just was a given, and we had to strive to, do well in academics. Forget doing well. I think whenever my report card would come, what I do remember is my mother asking me, "But did you stand first in class?" So not standing first in class or not doing well academically was never an option. It's just something that you did. So my maternal grandfather has, my whole sense of justice, sort of equity, a little bit of nationalistic pride as well, I think comes a lot from my maternal grandfather. So he was part of the freedom movement, and he was working with a British company. So the two in his mind was incongruity, and he spoke a lot about that. Of course, he had retired by the time he came to look after my brother and me and stayed with us. A lot of my earliest memories are about him. My paternal granddad was also somebody I was really close to, and just my deep faith in spirituality, in just a power above protecting us, guiding us, or even just surrendering your worries to, because honestly, there's nothing that you can do about it a lot of times, I think comes from there. So he would say, "Don't worry, all would be fine," and I would magically feel reassured. So I think both of them have had a really, really deep influence on me growing up. Then my own parents as well. My father's just deep sense of ethics. I grew up largely in Bangalore. My most formative years were in school in Bangalore. We moved to Bangalore when I was in class 7. Before that, we were in Chennai. And a lot of my formative years were in Bangalore. Growing up in this, with this slight dichotomy always. I was in this fancy, um, you know, slightly upper middle class school, but belonging to a very solidly middle class family where both my parents were, nationalized bank employees, with strong, sort of moral restrictions almost. I wasn't allowed to cut my hair, for example, or go out late. But then I was in the school where everybody was super anglicized. I came from Chennai in class 7 with a very strong, Tamil accent. Yeah, the big thing, that I've taken away from my family, my parents, my grandparents, especially my parents actually, and my upbringing is just this whole, striving for excellence. Um, I think home for me, honestly, is just Mumbai city. Yeah, when I think about home, it's just Mumbai. It's it's my work family. It's the it's all my friends. It's just this city. This city feels like home, like no other place in the world does. really depends on where I am, how much of an outsider that I feel. I think I feel safest when I'm in a school, when I'm in any of the communities that I work with, when maybe I am with my immediate family. That too, I would just say my parents, perhaps. Um, yeah, but otherwise, emotions, I mean, feeling emotionally unsafe. So I've learned to identify the feeling, not that I can control my reactions. More often than not, it's a very defensive reaction. It's almost like a porcupine getting its, you know, uh, needles out. And a lot of people see that side of me when I'm, not when I'm feeling emotionally unsafe. Now, over the last few years, I've learned to identify the feeling and try to, in my mind, just pause and really, incorporate this sense of being in the present, being in, and maybe letting that feeling pass before I can even respond. Oh, I'm hugely privileged, and I'm constantly reminded of the many privileges that I come with. Right, one being being an educated upper caste woman is a huge privilege. Being economically safe is a privilege. Not having to worry about, where my next meal will come and will I be able to access medical care is a privilege. Being able to speak English is a huge privilege. Again, layers and layers of discrimination, right? The first is just, I mean, just the huge inequity. My work glares, sort of glares that torch on the inequity that exists. Right from, what a child aspires for. A child, a 14-year-old, I have a 21-year-old at home, and I'm constantly working with 21-year-olds through my work, right? The two aspire for such different things. Their ability to view life is just so different because, the 21-year-old that I gave birth to doesn't have to worry about whether she will be able to finish her education. Whereas a 21-year-old that I work with is constantly worried about whether she'll even be allowed to finish her education, whether she can even dare to dream to go to work, to be financially independent. Just that glaring inequity, I think, stands out for me every single day. The inequity that comes with language, with the way you dress, the way you look, the mode of transport that you come with, the confidence that you carry because of, how your um, how you view life, right, automatically discriminates you. There's also a huge lived experience, that is almost strange and that I've tried to convert to my advantage, but not very successfully because old vulnerabilities come back. And strangely, it came back when you know, with horror and fascination and a sense of acceptance and defeat, I binge watched Indian matchmaking. Okay, being born dark skinned, short, and a girl in Indian society has gone against me from my childhood. More often than not, by the time I get back home, I cook at home, I carry my lunch bag. I'm carrying this huge backpack because, my shoulders, otherwise I have to carry my laptop every day. My shoulders give way. So I'm in this, either in a salwar kameez or a sari in this fairly Western world where all the other women with their, perfectly blow dried hair and perfect skin and their Western attire come in. So the security guard stops me, and often I'm asked, "Kiske ghar mein kaam karte ho?" Right? I'm asked to take the service lift, something that I have fought against every single moment over here. I don't have too many friends in the complex that I live in because of that, because I believe that just because people are our help, they should be segregated, right? It's something that I've fought against. I've often taken the service lift myself. So it's almost that discrimination is a lived experience. Unfortunately, my younger daughter, who looks a lot like me, has gone through that. She's actually written about it in a series called The Shade Card, this whole colorism in our country. So there's that level of discrimination, which for me is a very lived experience. There are so many gatekeepers for you, right? Security guards, lift operators, People, when you go to a doctor's clinic, the receptionist, because you don't fit into a certain mold, you're automatically fit into a mold that says, hey, disrespect me because I don't come from privilege like you. And that level of discrimination is really, really grating. When I was in my mid 30s, I suddenly came down with a cardiac issue. So, started having these really horrible panic attacks. So that was a bit of a challenge. And then immediately after that, my husband suddenly just collapsed one day, and that caused a lot of anxiety. And that phase almost came together for about 5 to 6 years. It was not a great phase. I've lost a lot of friends. I've lost a lot of my students to extremely unfortunate and sudden accidents. Just that fear of losing people is really, really strong. The fear, that anxiety around suddenly falling extremely unwell and feeling helpless. Yeah, that's something that, and the anxiety that has gone with it is something I've learned to live with. I still get anxiety attacks, but I just know how to manage them a little better now. But yeah, sort of the tipping point for me, after several years, after working for almost a decade in advertising and advertising research, actually happened one day when I was driving back home. I think there was always this feeling that there's something missing, right? I liked my job. I was doing reasonably well. I had 2 kids by then. I was struggling a little bit with, managing childcare and work and keeping the home going and all of that. All of that was fine, and I don't think that was anything out of the ordinary from anybody else. But, just felt that this is not me. It was just this, I don't even think it was as defined a feeling as this is not me, but just something just did not feel okay. Then one day when I was driving back home after a particularly, acrimonious day at work, when my boss at that time insisted that I travel to Trichy to do some research, and I always preferred to go to Madurai because there was a direct flight and I could go in the morning and come back in the evening, whereas Trichy meant that I needed to spend, one day traveling itself, and then with 2 little kids, and that was not something that I really enjoyed. And I was lost in my thoughts when, I stopped at a busy traffic signal in Mumbai, and then sort of was waiting for the signal to turn green, and it was at 6:30 in the evening on a muggy May evening. So it wasn't dark or anything like that. It was just really crowded and noisy and dusty. And I was standing at the signal, I was driving, and then I just happened to look to my left. And I saw this, little girl lying on the pavement. She was fast asleep on the pavement. She was wearing, I still remember very vividly, she was wearing these, new shoes. Probably somebody must have thrown them off or given them to her. And her dress had flown up in the breeze. She wasn't very little girl, right? Like she may have been 2 or 3 years old, tiny little thing, sleeping on the pavement. It was breezy, so her dress had swept up, and she wasn't wearing any underwear. And there was this man standing right next to her and masturbating. There was just this, this anger, fear, anxiety that just sort of welled up. And even now when I think about it, it's just like a very vivid feeling that I still remember. And then the light turned green, and then I went ahead, but kept thinking about it and kept feeling like I should do something, but I did nothing. I spent many sleepless nights, more because I think very selfishly I looked at it as a mother, and I kept thinking, this could happen to my daughters. I have 2 daughters, and they were really little at that time. My younger one was about the same age as that little girl. And then I kept thinking that, oh, this could happen to my daughters. And it really, really, sort of bothered me. I did nothing about it for many weeks. And then when it really sort of said that I have to do something, and I wrote into, at that time, this organization called Akanksha. That incident, that, almost fleeting incident, actually changed my life completely. After that incident, it almost seemed a bit meaningless that I was selling soaps and selling oil, cooking oil. Just didn't, I said that if children can't be safe, really, what am I doing, right? So it did that incident did make me question what I wanted to do with my life a lot. I realized that, just the indignity that comes with poverty is something that really, really bothers me. It bothers me to a great extent. So I completely changed track. I started working in the social sector, and that's been my life since that day, that evening in 2001. Sometimes a lot of times I feel I could just be a better person, as in a lot more patient, a lot more empathetic to everyone else. I would say, because I do believe that I get pretty lost in my work and what needs to get done. That often I don't think I'm able to see the struggles of people who work with me or my own family or my friends. So that's something I wish I could change about myself. Yeah, and then I just wish I could do things a lot better with a lot more human connection, perhaps. Really, I think if each one of us did unto others as we would wish upon ourselves, the world would just be such a magical place. I think if we said that, okay, if this doesn't work for me, it can't work for anybody else, right? And not accept inequity and not discriminate, I think, yeah, that's really the biggest thing. So I run an organization called Antarang Foundation. Back in 2001, when I spoke about that incident, I joined this organization called the Akanksha Foundation that worked in education and supplementary education. Through the years that I spent there, one of the things that I realized was that, we take this whole transition from education to careers and employment for granted. I don't think if anyone asked me when I was in class 9, what would you be doing? I would bat an eyelid, or I would, wonder if I'd be able to finish an education or whether I'd be allowed to work. It was just something that I took for granted. And I believe the rest of the world also pretty much worked that way, that if you were talented, if you had the talent, or if you're willing to work hard, and you can pretty much achieve anything. I think that experience, when I started working with children and young people from less privileged backgrounds, was when I realized how much I took things for granted. So what I founded was this bridge for young adults, especially from low income populations and marginalized populations, but literally any young adult, to make that transition successfully from adolescence to adulthood from a work, career, and professional perspective. Right? How do you get young adults to safely complete an education and get into a career of their choice? Because choice is still the prerogative of a very few in our country. Not everybody can really make a choice to become what they want. Not everybody is able to choose what career they want to. Not everybody knows, even understands the concept of careers. And to my mind, education that does not allow for someone to move up the social hierarchy and to move up the economic ladder is wasted, right? Then what is the point of that education if it cannot get me out of poverty? If it cannot get a young person, if it cannot help a young person break their family's intergenerational cycle of poverty, what use is that education? So the organization that I founded works on enabling this equity in access to employment and careers. We provide career guidance to young people, to children in government schools. So we work across all government schools, covering about 40,000 children across Mumbai, Pune, and Udaipur currently. We make sure that ninth graders and 10th graders are aware, first of all the world of career opportunities that are available for them. And at the end of the program in the ninth standard, and my favorite day is to go on the last day of the program, when they do something called their own career maps, right? Where they themselves, all these children themselves, they look at their interest code, they look at their aptitudes, and then I love sitting in the back row, because invariably there will be that kid sitting in front of me and turn around and say that मैं ये सब बन सकता हूँ, and with that absolute magical look in her eyes. And that, I think, is worth everything. When you open up this world of opportunity for them that they never thought is even possible for them, you just feel that it's just so worth it. So that's where we begin. We begin at ninth standard level, provide career guidance, and once they're 18, we make sure that they're able to enter those aspirational careers, and we provide access to those careers. An employability skills training program that we put these young people to and finally place them into careers of their choice. That's what we do. Over the last 7 years, we work with close to about 90,000 young adults. 86% of them today are in careers of their choice.
Let's untag ourselves. Let's untag each other as we all share the same light.